All right, let's talk about something absolutely critical in any workplace: personal protective equipment, or PPE. Now, this isn't just about ticking boxes or following rules. At its core, it's about a really simple but powerful promise: making sure that everyone, and I mean everyone, gets to go home safe at the end of their shift. Okay, picture this. You're in a plant, and it's full of potential hazards. You know there are safety systems in place, right? Procedures you have to follow. But when it all comes down to it, what is that final barrier? What's your last line of defense standing between you and a really bad day? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It's the gear you wear. That's it. Think of it as your own personal suit of armor, tailor-made to protect you from whatever your job throws at you. So that brings us to the official definition, right? Personal protective equipment is equipment you wear to reduce your exposure to hazards. But, and this is the really important part, listen to this last bit, when other safety controls are not enough. That little phrase, it changes everything. It's a huge distinction. And that whole idea that PPE is what you use when other stuff isn't enough, that brings us to our first big point. We've got to understand exactly where PPE fits into the whole safety picture. Here's a hint. It's not the first thing you should be thinking about, it's the final critical layer of protection. Okay, so this right here, this is the hierarchy of controls. It's basically the gold standard for how to deal with any hazard. You see, you always start at the top. The best thing to do is eliminate the hazard completely. If you can't do that, you try to substitute it with something safer. Then you use engineering controls, then administrative controls, and only then, way down at the bottom of the list, do we get to PPE. It's absolutely essential, but it's the final barrier. That's why we keep calling it the last line of defense. So, now we know why we wear it. It makes sense, right? Now let's get into the what. We're going to do a quick head-to-toe tour of the standard gear you'll see out there. Let's start at the very top, your head. The hard hat is, an icon for a reason. Its main job is super simple: protect your most valuable asset, your brain, from any kind of impact. Could be a falling tool, could be you just bumping your head on a low pipe. It's there to take the hit. All right, next up, your eyes. They are so vulnerable to just about everything. Fine dust, little particles flying around, chemical splashes. Basic safety glasses are the absolute minimum. But for anything higher risk, like grinding or working with certain chemicals, you're going to need a full face shield, no question. Now listen to this statistic, because it's a big one. Of all the injuries that happen in industry, what's the most injured body part? It's your hands, more than anything else. And that's exactly why finding and wearing the right gloves isn't just a suggestion, it is an absolute necessity. Okay, moving down to the rest of the body and your feet. We're talking coveralls to protect you from splashes or heat, and of course, safety shoes. And look, these are not just any old work boots. They are specially engineered, usually with steel toes, to protect you from impacts, and they have special soles to keep you from slipping. So when you put all of that together, you get the basic plant PPE setup. You can almost think of this as the standard uniform. In any designated area in a plant, wearing this full kit, helmet, glasses, coveralls, gloves, and shoes, it's not optional. It is the mandatory minimum just to be in that area. Okay, so you've got the basic gear on, you're all set, right? Well, not always, and this is where it gets really critical. You have to understand that not all PPE is the same. You absolutely have to match the right gear to the specific hazard you're facing. And this is such a simple but vital point. Listen to this. The wrong gloves are dangerous. Why? Because wearing the wrong type of PPE can actually be more dangerous than wearing nothing at all. It gives you this false sense of security, and that might make you take a risk you wouldn't have otherwise. Let's stick with gloves, because they're a perfect example. A pair of, say, chemical-resistant gloves might do a great job protecting you from a solvent splash. But those same gloves, they'll give you practically zero protection from a sharp piece of metal. For that, you need special cut-resistant gloves. See what I mean? Using one for the other's job, you're just asking for trouble. And, this same idea applies to hazards you can't even see. A simple respirator, it's great for filtering dust or certain vapors out of the air, but what if you're in a place with no oxygen or a super toxic atmosphere? A filter isn't going to do you any good. That's when you need a self-contained breathing apparatus, an SCBA, which brings its own supply of clean, breathable air. So the big question is, how do you know which gear to use? Well, here's the most important part. You don't guess. Ever. The right PPE for any job is decided by a formal process. It's called a job risk assessment. It's a serious, systematic look at the task to figure out exactly what the hazards are and what specific equipment is needed to do the job safely. But even with the right gear, it's just as important to understand what PPE can't do, because like any tool, it has some very real and very serious limitations. You have to burn this into your brain. Wearing PPE does not make unsafe work safe. A sharp edge is still sharp, a toxic chemical is still toxic. All the gear does is provide a barrier. It lowers your exposure, sure, but it never, ever makes an unsafe action safe. The risk is always there. And because that gear is your critical last line of defense, it has to be in perfect shape. This is completely non-negotiable. Before every single time you use it, you have to inspect your gear. Is there a crack in your helmet, a tear in your glove, scratches on your safety glasses? If your equipment is damaged in any way, it can't do its job. It needs to be replaced. Period. And that brings us to our final, and honestly, the most important point of all. You can have the best, most expensive equipment in the world, but it's totally useless without the right person wearing it. At the end of the day, safety is all about professionalism, discipline, and building the right habits. Really, it all comes down to one of two mindsets. You've got the professional. They understand that wearing PPE correctly every single time is just part of the job. It's a sign of respect for the work, for their coworkers, for themselves. And then you have the careless person, the one who takes shortcuts, who thinks the rules don't apply to them. That person puts everyone at risk. And that's really the bottom line, isn't it? The procedures, the risk assessments, the fancy gear, it's all incredibly important. But that entire system hinges on one thing: each and every person taking personal responsibility for their own safety and for the safety of everyone working around them. So, we'll end with this thought. The equipment is there. It's been chosen for the job. You've checked it over. Your gear is ready. The only question left is, are you? Are you ready to wear it with the discipline and the respect that real safety demands?